At what point can you really call yourself an artist? Everybody makes art, but everybody makes food. It doesn't mean that we're all chefs. Is an artist somebody who earns a living from their art? Are great artists the ones who earn the most? Perhaps a better question is, what does it take to be a great artist? What does it take to be a genius? In the beginning, there was art. Then, there was religious art. Then, art academies. Then, art galleries. Art dealers. Art auctions. Art prizes. Art press. Art critics. Art curators. Art advisors. Art fairs. Biennales. Corporate sponsorship. Till eventually, it became very difficult to find the art in the art world.
Hello, Internet. Da Vinci, Einstein. What makes a genius might sometimes seem obvious, but what does that little word really mean? If you and I met in ancient Rome, you might say, "Hi Peter, you're a genius." But you wouldn't make much sense, because back then, the word genius meant something quite different to what it means today. The meaning of most concepts are fluid, and they adjust and adapt throughout history to embody the values of their time. But sometimes obsolete concepts just hang around despite the fact they no longer make much sense. These days, when some charming individual declares,
I'm a creative genius,
what they're really saying is, I'm so brilliant that I'm a little more than just human. If that doesn't already seem a little bit silly to you, it soon will. We're going to explore the history of genius as an idea.
In ancient Greece, there were no geniuses. Instead, every person had a daemon, or spirit, that acted as their personal link to the gods. People had daemons, cities had daemons, even boats had daemons, making sure they didn't sink. A few hundred years later, the Romans adapted the Greek daemon into their concept of the genius. Just like the Greek daemon, everyone in Rome had their own genius. It was simply their connection to the gods. Only now it was generally internalized. Sound like a familiar concept? That's because the Christians later adapted genius into their concept of the soul, and twisted daemon into demon to invalidate the old pagan religion.
Under Christianity, the daemons had to go, but genius just drifted into the background. That is, until the Renaissance.
Before the Renaissance, artists were generally regarded as craftsmen, equal to carpenters or stonemason, until it seemed that some artists possessed divine insight, and with that, the genius had returned. But Europe's royal families had their own delusions of divinity, and were happy to partner up with genius artists who were willing to depict their delusions. This exchange of narcissism went on happily for several hundred years, until the French Revolution suggested that the geniuses should be the ones running the show. That's when this guy tried to take over Europe. Things got pretty ugly, and he wouldn't have been able to do it if he wasn't blessed with the divine light of genius. But that was nothing compared to the next supposed genius who tried to take over Europe. That's the biggest danger with the notion of genius. It elevates human beings to the status of demigods who are beyond criticism. The label of genius can also rob artists of their humanity, by making their achievements seem so far out of reach that us mere mortals need not even bother attempting to reach them. But these days, the importance of genius has largely been replaced by that of celebrity. In fact, the best way to be considered for genius status is to first become a celebrity, then dally in a bit of contemporary art. What began in Rome as a universal connection to the gods has become a token of fame. Genius, much like the concept of celebrity, seems to bring us closer to brilliance, but in fact, it pushes our own potential for brilliance just out of reach.
These days, the label genius is a bit of a joke, reserved for vain celebrities, dead artists, and ones that are on their way out. So, why do we still use it? We still use it because it's fun to believe in magic. The idea of genius is left over from a time when we still believed in dragons, goblins, and gods. Genius was just a way of declaring that certain individuals were closer to those gods than the rest of us. Now, I'm not saying that geniuses aren't clever people. In fact, that's exactly what I am saying. Geniuses are just clever people. But what does all this tell us about art? It tells us that for some people, art is still a kind of magic. Every time you hear somebody try to sneak past the G word, they're basically saying that there's a difference between great communication and genius art. But is there? Do you believe in genius, or are they just clever people?